Off we go, recording, lights, camera, action, fans, heat, everything. Microphone, terrible hat hair, too bad. Right, let's get through this little maze of roads before we get serious. Lots of traffic, lots of whatever, lots of pedestrians. Okay, we're off. Hi, Vincent here. Glad you could join me today. Recently-ish, I did a video where I was showing a bunch of arcade parts and showing previous projects of mine, and I was talking about an upcoming project that I had cooking in my head that I was collecting bits and pieces for, and I thought it was about time I had a little update on that. Let's see if I've made any progress. Yeah, I've made a little bit of progress. It's been over Christmas, so haven't been able to spend a great deal of time on it, but we have some plans and they're cooking. So if you see me talking about this previous project, you'll recall that it was good for the time, but it's got a few shortcomings. It's got quite a small screen and it's vertical. So when you're playing horizontal, the screen really doesn't work very well. It's got limited controls because it's designed to be ultra compact, and it only has kind of standard joystick and button controls. So it's good for what it does, but I wanted to broaden the scope for this next project. So we'll push you back over there. So one of the first things I did was start to draw up some sketches of designs of how I want this project to shape up. I've got this idea slowly forming in my head that I want to make another mini cabinet, but I want a slightly bigger screen than this old thing that I have, like a 10-inch screen for my failing eyesight, but it was still small enough to be like a desktop mini cabinet. I don't want a great big clunking great thing. And also, just to complicate matters, I want this to have interchangeable control panels. So rather than have one gigantic control panel with a million different things on it, I want to have nice little compact panels, like one with a spinner on it, maybe one with a trackball, one with an analog stick, like that I can change out different control panels and have them lock onto the front of it. So I was going to need to come up with some clever carpentry solution that's going to allow me to do that and lock different panels on. So I've made a few sketches and I've got some ideas of how that could work. And then, so each separate control panel would have its own controller unit inside, and then it would connect via USB. So there'd be a little like USB hole in the back, something like that. And we want the design of this to be like a bit more ergonomic than my mini upright arcade cabinet where the controls are high up. We want to have the controls like down at desk level for a bit more user comfort, and to like give more airspace for a bigger screen. So all of that came together. I sketched out a few shapes that I think I'm vaguely happy with, and so the time came to kind of mock that up in cardboard just to see if it works in real life, and also to be able to sort of position the components and make sure that I'm going to have room for the screen, that's going to be feasible. And another key factor on the design is that I want the screen to be rotateable so that I can play games in Yoko or Tate mode, but use the full screen for both. And I had the idea that the screen could be mounted into a square panel that you could just pull out, turn around, push back in again at 90 degrees. So there had to be room for a square panel that held the screen on the front, so lots of screen front lots of front panel space for that. So yeah, so I made a cardboard mock-up to get the general shape of it, and I'm more or less happy with it, but I think it still needs a few tweaks before I finalise the shape and start actually cutting up some real boards for it. So this is the beauty of making a cardboard mock-up. You can kind of play around with the design until you get something that's kind of pleasing to the eye and functional, and you can fit, you know, you're going to be able to fit all your components in. So to that end, I've also been starting to accumulate those components. So I've got a suitable 10-inch screen, like a 10-inch 4x3 aspect ratio. That's really important because all the old style games are all 4x3 aspect ratio. 1024 by, what is it, 768 resolution, I think. But it's a 10-inch LCD panel, perfect for the job. I think it was designed for used in Raspberry Pi projects or whatever, but we're not going to use a Raspberry Pi for our version. So that comes to, what are we going to use? So originally I was going to use this tiny mini, very, very mini PC cube thing called a Chewy Lark box. And I might put a separate segment in here about what happened with that. I had this Chewy Lark box micro-sized mini PC that's been sitting in my spares cupboard for quite a few years now. That is really tiny, that will fit the bill. We can fit this onto anything. So I decided this would be perfect. What I wanted to do though, I think this had Windows 10 on it. I could prepare an SD card because it has an SD slot in the side, and with Bartop on it, and boot from that. And then if I'm happy with it, I can just overwrite the Windows drive. And this was a pretty straightforward process. I've done this several times before, and on the initial image that you get, you're given a few like public domain sample ROMs on there just to check that everything's working. But I wanted to test out to see whether this Bartop operating system would handle all the new, like the various analog controllers that I was going to throw at it. So I put Arkanoid on there and plugged in the analog spinner that I'm going to be using, and I may have had to make some tweaks, but I think all I needed to do was go into the RetroArch settings for that game and just change the input controller type to mouse, and then it just worked. So we're good to go. Thumbs up, this is going to support what we need. And I have to say, like Arkanoid, playing Arkanoid with a real spinner is fantastic. It's so much better than like digital substitute like keyboard or joystick. So I was getting quite excited by this point. It was looking good. And then disaster struck. On my test rig where I was running this, it froze up, and I was getting some glitches on screen. And I realized that the cooling fan wasn't running. So it had overheated. So I switched it all off, unplugged everything, powered it down, went and had a look on the internet. And yeah, sure enough, there's lots of reports of this box not having very good cooling system compatibility in Linux. Like the drivers don't really work properly. And I should have realized this, because in this cabinet over here, I'm using the same brains, and I had to resort to putting an external fan on top of the case, which I will show in a separate clip. I had to resort to putting an external USB powered fan that sits on top of the case and pushes air through it, and it's on all the time. So no matter, we let it cool down. I can do the same with this. I can get one of those fans, put it on the top. So if we're going to have a fan running all the time on this, I didn't want it to be as noisy as the one in this old cabinet. So I did some research, and I discovered this brand that make like case modding fans called Noctua. So I found the one that I wanted, and I got one. Here it is, Noctua fan. And these things are brilliant. They run really quiet. They push lots of air through, and people use these for PlayStation 2 mods as well. And it's a good size that can just fit on there. We can use that as our cooling solution and just power that from USB. No problem. So we got it all set up again, fan installed on the top, booted it up. At this point it looked like we've done some permanent damage to this little box because it was not booting up at all. I think it would boot up initially and then it would freeze during the boot up sequence. So I went into the BIOS. I was able to get hold of some of the temperature management settings, but then it would lock up in the BIOS. So absolute disaster. I've basically killed this little box. So we had to think again. So at this point, I was quite despondent because I just fried the brains of this thing. But I decided, right, we've got to keep going at this point. So let's go out and find out what we're going to get to replace it. Did you know there's about 1 million different micro and mini PCs these days that will do the job? And they range from super budget, which is what I'm after, all the way up to hundreds and hundreds of pounds, powerhouses that are really powerful, that can run all your PC games and everything with graphics accelerators, all of that in. But I was determined to get absolute best value, most bang for the buck. So what I ended up choosing, there's a lot of mini PCs out there, and I really don't need to spend a great deal of money. We don't need much computing power. So I ended up with a GMK Tech NUC box, and it's an old one that has an old Intel chip in it, but I got it for £70 or something. So and that's perfect for this. This will be able to emulate everything that I need, and it's not quite as compact as the Chewy Lark box was, but it does have a couple of advantages. Because it's not quite as compact, it's got a better thermal management. It's not going to overheat as easily, and also it has dual video out. It has 2 HDMI out ports, so that opens up some possibilities. That means we could actually have a dynamic marquee display as a second screen. So I looked around to see if there was anything suitable, and sure enough, I found this super wide format, but small. I think it's a 3:1 aspect ratio LCD panel that I'm going to use as a marquee display up top that can change depending on what game you're playing. It will swap over and it will show the graphics, the title graphics for whichever game, and it's perfect. It just fits exactly into my cardboard prototype size, so I think we're going to use that. That's perfect. Also, while I'm thinking about this, I was thinking about a sound system for it. Might as well make it sound nice. Might as well have a good sound system. And you can get these mini sound bars that are about the same size. Sorry, that are about the same size and have fantastic sound quality. So I'll have a sound bar up top as well somewhere. I've got to work out exactly how this fits together. And I'm probably going to use a similar model to this one that I used in the previous project for making a musical ambient sound box. So I'll probably use the same model of soundbar, and the advantage of that is I can just use the one out of that for prototyping without having to buy another piece of hardware. Actually having to buy another one for it, and then maybe if we decide we need both, I can buy another one. So what else have we got? On the control panel side of things, I think I probably already showed in my earlier video, but we've got this spinner which we can attach a steering wheel to make a driving control panel. I thought it'd be nice if we were doing that to make it a bit more outrun style and have a gear stick on the side. So I've managed to get hold of this AliExpress special little miniature 2-position gear shifter that you just push forward or push back, and has micro switches on it, so you can use that for outrun style high-low gear shifting. So nothing too sophisticated, but I think that'd be perfect. The size of control panel that we're going to end up using lends itself well to that, just about, I think. And we'll have another version of the control panel that will be centered around an analog stick for games like Space Harrier. I'm not quite sure whether I'm going to put the stick in the middle for these. I think I might look up what some of these games actual control panel layouts were, as in the original real life things, and maybe copy one of those. And I'm also debating whether to get some form of arcade trackball and have a trackball panel as well, and probably another regular 6-button Street Fighter layout digital joystick panel. So that'll probably do it. So 3 or 4 swappable panels, that'll be pretty cool. So what's next with this project? So next I need to refine my actual cabinet design. It was originally based loosely on the Vuelix panel shape, where it's kind of diagonal backward slanting thing. Not quite sure if I got that right yet or if I'm happy with it. So we'll firm up that design and then we'll get to chopping. I've got some board ready to go. I just need to work out the shapes of it, and I'll chop some up, and then I'll start making the actual cabinet and work on that locking mechanism for the control panel, so that I can start making a couple of sample panels, work on the locking mechanism. And then alongside all of this carpentry fun, I'm going to be finalising, what kind of brains I'm going to put into this mini PC. Whether I'm going to go with Batacera, which is what I've used in the past, does a good job, or whether I branch out and use maybe SteamOS, because you can have Emulation Station Desktop Edition as your kind of emulator platform within SteamOS, so maybe do that. But this isn't really going to be a Steam machine, but there are a few games that I've only got on Steam that would be quite nice to have running in a panel. Some of the like cave shooters and things. So I'm not decided on that yet, so I'll keep you posted, and I'll paste some like experiments of what I've done with that. But that's where we are at the moment with this project. It's shaping up. Looks like it's quite a fun project. Again, with these things, I'll probably have just as much fun in the like design and construction as actually playing the thing in the end. But that's it for now. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about that. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.